Welcome everybody to the inaugural video on my MinnePainting channel. Today I am assembling and painting Deadpool and Hydra Bob, or Bob from Hydra from the game Crisis Protocol. And this is actually the first commission I've done in a while. I did a light amount of commissioning when I was living down in Kansas and didn't have much family or friends because I was living away from my home state. So back in Minnesota, and since the move and some changes in life, got back into painting, got my setup and studio all put back together. So been enjoying this again, and this is my first foray back into it for a buddy of mine. He actually has a channel himself where he plays Crisis Protocol, plays Star Wars X-Wing, plays a little bit of just random board games, lots of card games and stuff. So if you're into just checking out a YouTuber who throws a smattering of different things at you to see something new, check out Yote's Gaming. I'll throw that link in the description. And he'll, in the future, be playing with this mini that I'm painting up here for him in Crisis Protocol. So be on the lookout for that. We will go ahead and just plow through all of this cleaning and assembly, though, and get to the good stuff. Alright, well, now that we're back and our models are magically primed, which is always good to see, let's get into the painting. So worth noting that this is the first time I've ever recorded myself doing any of this painting, so if you've got any advice in the comments, would love to hear what people have to say as far as camera angle, tips and tricks for getting to focus on the subject as you're painting it. I am using my GoPro right now as a webcam, which I've found is pretty high quality, but I do have an actual camera as well, just not set up for it, so I might toy with that in the future. But hopefully you can still get a good amount of detail here. I am also running this about 3 times speed, just so we're not sitting for too long. You can see me here. I'm doing a zenithal highlight, which I really love for getting quick but really high quality results. I've recently been using a lot of glazes through the airbrush in order to just lay on that color. I found that it's still pretty saturated. You still get a nice bright color from the glaze, and it lets you, I don't know, it just lets you focus on the fun parts of the model, I guess, not worrying about that base coat or the big, you know, like the big surfaces that you just have to repeatedly do some blending on. I like picking one thing every model and saying, this is what I'm going to push, this is what I'm going to try to do, and just make myself happy with that one thing. And as long as that one thing, as long as I learn something from it, I'm happy. Even if it doesn't turn out exactly how I like it. Recently just tried like a really overblown OSL effect on one of my other models I was painting, and it didn't exactly work out how I thought. I think I probably could have bumped the contrast on the layers underneath to make it come through and not look quite so washed out. But the goal of that model was just to really push a super strong OSL effect and see if I could still make it look interesting, still make it look good. And I learned from it, which is one of the things that I love about painting and trying new things. So for this model, I was really just wanting to paint it clean. The commissioner wanted box art, so just wanted to basically try to match the quality that I'd seen on the box art, which is great. Like, I love these comic book characters. Crisis Protocol has some really clean models to paint, and they can look really sharp if just done cleanly. So I thought it was a good foray back into commissioning, because I am a little bit out of practice, I'll be honest, but felt really good to finish these and get the reaction that I did from my buddy, who thought that they looked amazing, which is that's what you want to hear right after putting time in. So as I'm going through and I'm airbrushing, I have a little squirt bottle that I use for like quick clearing my airbrush, and just take that squirter, aim it, tilt it down, squirt it into the cup, and just let it kind of blast out of the inside there, and then running just water through it I've got a little airbrush holder with the glass catch, and just clear it out. And it's pretty quick turnaround for upping colors when you're not doing like a blending and trying to get higher and higher. You can clear it pretty quick that way. And my airbrush was quite a mess coming out of storage, so this might be me just trying to get some extra cleaning, or realizing that my needle wasn't as oiled as I thought it was, or whatever it is. But there's always going to be those hiccups, and I think the important thing is just being able to still have fun doing it. And I'll tell you, this first commission was just pure fun, and the outcome was exactly what you wanted to see. So being new to actually recording my painting sessions, I think you're catching some of this. As I'm zenithal highlighting, I'm not necessarily keeping it in the middle of the frame, so you might see some attempts at editing to try and keep that more centered later in the line, or later down the line on this video. But that's all I'm doing right now, is just throwing some zenithal down. One of the goals for this channel, one of the things that I really wanted to hit on, was just to give people something to throw on in the background. So I didn't want to there are so many amazing videos out there. Like, I've really been just devouring, knowing that I was going to be able to get my studio back set up. I've just been devouring YouTube videos and seeing what new techniques that, in the past, because it's been about 2 years for me, that I could jump off, get my feet wet doing again. And I think that there's not quite a need for that, especially for my level, because I'm by no means like a golden demon level painter, right? Like, I'm enjoying it. I feel like I do above standard quality work, but nothing really to write home about. But one of the things that I love is just throwing on like some lo-fi hip-hop or something, and just jamming a paint session, not having to think too much, not having to look up. And when you're not doing your research, when you're not figuring out how to do a technique, and you're just painting, I just want to have something calming and smooth and related to the hobby that you're doing as you're doing it. So hope that as you're painting, as you're listening to me talk in the background and peeking up every once in a while to see what I'm doing, don't worry too much about the techniques I'm using or whatever. I would still love to hear comments. If people have feedback or tips or tricks they want to leave in the comments, by all means. I love learning. But yeah, just if you can watch and learn something, that's fantastic, but not necessarily the goal here. Like I said, there's plenty of channels out there that can teach you a lot better than I can. So you'll notice here I'm using a red glaze, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to tackle that swoosh on Deadpool's base. You know, he wanted box art, so I know I want to do the gradient on it, but the red got a little bit layered on a little bit thickly, so knowing I'm gonna have to go back in and probably darken those shadows a little bit, maybe bring up the highlights a little bit more on the red portion of his costume. But this green was an absolute pleasure to airbrush on. It went on real thin, you know, just shooting the glaze right through the brush, not even needing to water it down. Just taking your time, letting it dry, throwing another layer on. It really just brought that bright green out like the Hydra uniform has. So I'll be honest, the uniform on Bob, all it is a black prime job with some zenithal going up and green glaze over it. That's it. Everything else, like, and it captured all of the details in the abs and the chest. I'm hoping that this video comes through pretty well so you can catch those details. But if not, at the end of the video, I'll throw up the pictures of the final product. And you know, really happy with how Bob's shading turned out, especially for how much effort I put into it, because it was not a lot. Cutting a little bit ahead here after the glaze is dried. I'm ready to do some brush work. Got my world's best dog dad coffee cup there, given to me on Father's Day by my fiance. Puppy's name's Bo. He is a Belgian Malinois mix, and he is energetic as hell, but love him. He's actually sitting down between my feet right now as I'm recording this. One of my habits is definitely using my thumbnail to test. And one of the things that I've actually loved to do as I've done that, and I like to use it for testing my shading as well, because a lot of times I'll go into a model without a strict paint plan, and I will, you know, I'll know that I want to use like this for the base color of the costume, and this for the base color of the boots, and for the base color of the helmet, or whatever it may be. But I'll know that I want it to be cold shadows or warm shadows, but I won't necessarily have a plan for exactly what shades or washes I'm going to actually use. So when I'm testing and I'm putting that base layer down, making sure that it's the right consistency that I'm looking for, I'll actually use my thumb to test the shadows on as well. So I'll go through with like maybe see how a blue wash would look on the yellow, or see how a purple wash, just or whatever it is, right? Just as an example, but just a useful little bit, a way to use something that you've already made, right? You've already got the stuff on your thumb. Might as well test on her. The one thing I'll say too about unpacking, getting your stuff out of storage and setting up, is I was itching to just get right to painting, and probably should have taken a little bit more time just to make sure that my equipment was prepped and ready to go, because I was fighting my brushes a little bit. Probably could have done with a couple replacements. You'll notice that I'm using the Citadel brushes. I had Da Vinci sable hair brushes that I had used before moving, and actually a couple of them got damaged, the sizes that I'd probably be using right now, unfortunately. So I have ordered up, but if you're at all in the brush game, you know that there's a delay on almost everything. So went Artist Opus. So hopefully I can get those shipped out fairly soon, because I am excited to get some high quality brushes again, because it's just hard when you're fighting a little bit against your tools. And I went through and cleaned them since this, but they're not bad, and I'll be fine. I will survive. Painted with worse. You can paint with, toothpicks. This is actually how I started. Fun fact, first miniature I ever painted was for Star Wars Armada, and it was one of the little A-Wings, itty bitty little A-Wings, because Armada is an even smaller scale than X-Wing is, and they come in little sets of 3, and I was taking a Q-tip and some craft paints to customize my A-Wings, and that was probably 7 years ago now, and it just snowballed real hard from there. But would love to hear what your guys' first models were. I love hearing how people started in this hobby. You get so many different stories. You get people of all ages starting at different points for different reasons, and I think that one thing that sort of transcends is just the love of the tranquility of painting, like that relaxation that you get. Just really, really satisfying, especially when you complete something. Feels good. So for Bob here, I knew I want to keep him simple. I had my buddy from Yote Gaming who commissioned this. He said that he wasn't even sure if he was going to play with Bob, so I wasn't going to focus too hard. I definitely wanted the centerpiece of this duo to be Deadpool. He's more dynamic stance. He's just got the better base, so I knew I was going to be putting a lot more effort on that, and wanted to keep this simple. One of the reasons that I didn't plan on doing too much blending or anything with brush on his green parts of his costume, but still so pleasantly surprised with how that glaze went over the zenithal highlighting. And like in person it looks sharp, so that's not a pat on my own back. It was literally one of the easiest things I've done. I am just still a little blown away with how, like, the quality versus effort. That's probably, this green costume has probably been the greatest disparity between level of effort put into it and then quality that's come out. So give that a shot. If you got an airbrush, if not, like, glazing with a brush is the same process, just takes a little longer. The only issue would be the zenithal highlighting, but you can do that with just spray cans. There's tons of videos out on that. I know Tabletop Minions, there's so many people that cover good cheap ways to do stuff without an airbrush and still get that same effect. So check that out. And if not, like I just got an airbrush probably 3 years ago. So the first 3 to 4 years of my painting, I was no airbrush, because I kind of figured I wasn't, I didn't have a need. I'm not going to be all fancy painter. And then as things progress, naturally, you just spend more and more. So I picked that up. Just honestly, it was because I wanted to be able to prime. As many airbrush purchasers, I'm sure, get it. They just want to be able to prime and base coat inside and not be at the whim of the weather and not have to spend an extra 45 minutes putting base coats down. So it's where it began, and as you just learn and pick up little tricks here and there, it gets better and better. I did have an issue with this yellow. I knew that I wanted this to be my base coat yellow, and it did not want to cover it all. And I know that anyone watching that's painted before knows that yellow is just a difficult color to get to an opaque level. But I think I did 4 coats total and just chalked it up to my paints being a little settled, a little older. A lot of the pigment had settled because they've been in the same case, same position for almost 2 years. So chalked it up to that. Got some little balls, and I used some sinkers just to shake up and try and hammer those pigments back into the medium. But working with what I got for now. But again, overall, happy with Bob here. I will say I'm pretty excited at the format that I'm planning to do for these videos. Just keeping it like this, pretty simple, but it's basically an open door for what I can talk about. And this is just for me, because my stepson wants to get into, or has already gotten into, painting as well. It's actually one of the things that jump started my motivation to get my setup going. It's because he saw my Boxes of God tier that I had kickstarted and wanted to break that out and try that out. And then I told him about my painting and showed him some of my previous stuff, and he wanted to try it. And I was like, hey, let's do that. Let's get this bad boy going. And he painted up Landslide from God tier and looks fantastic. I remember looking at my first model again. I will not count the A-Wing for this. My first actual miniature model, and looking at his, and he's an artist for sure. So I think he's only 9 years old. So getting him started and having him interested now I'm more than happy to support that. So having that motivate me as well to get me going. But this channel is basically just for me to post videos of the stuff I'm painting, doing some collaborations, to use a creator term, because for those who don't know, I also am co-founder / equal part owner of Outcast's Haven, which is a primarily flesh and blood YouTube channel. If you haven't heard of that card game and are into card games, definitely check out Flesh and Blood by Legend Story Studios. At this point, I don't know how you haven't heard about it, but yeah, we're a competitive team, puts out regular content there. So wanted to just branch out and do this on my own though with my stepson and explore some different opportunities for ways that we can put out a fun format, or a format that people are going to enjoy. So would appreciate comments. You know, you want to talk about sports, you want to talk, like I can talk about anything right now, because painting is fun and relaxing. It's fun to watch. But if you're painting yourself, you're focused on your model. Like my voice, yeah, it is what it is. I know it can be grating on people, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I just don't like the voice. That's fine. But would love to, you know, hear what people want me to talk about. So what I'm doing now is kind of going through and just touching up with some brighter yellow. Nope, that's wrong. Kind of lost my spot. I'm actually going through with a brown, and I am not going to use a wash on the yellow because I really don't want to mess up any of that green that I've got. So I'm doing a much more deliberate approach with my brush as I'm just smattering paint all over the box. So deliberate. I'll use a wash later to almost line the yellow parts, but I'm not even going for much of a hard line. That's just to get that brown shadow, that warm shadow color, because I thought with the green being so cold and dominant, I really wanted to warm up the model a little bit, just to give it that contrast of warm versus cold. So I figured the brown was a good opportunity, both with the leather pouches and holster that Bob has, as well as the yellow can be a little warmer as well. I'm going through and realizing some of my paints have not withstood the test of time. Putting that off for later, saying we'll hit that brown later. Let's take care of that face. And I started with pale flesh and realized that it was not a good mid-tone. I wanted the mid-tone to be a little darker. So adjust that a little later down the line, but still use this as a good base to build the mid-tone that I wanted off of later, just to take care of how dark the face had stayed, or the skin portion of Bob's face had stayed. So just throwing the pale flesh down to serve as that lighter base so that the color comes through a little better in the mid-tone that I'll put down later on. And I think that is probably about where we'll cut it off for this video. I did about a 12-hour session for both these models. Probably a 5-7 split, I'd say. And I'm going to experiment a little bit on the channel with length of video, see what people like. But this first one will keep around a half hour. And, you know, I think maybe we'll do a shorter one, finishing off Bob, and then a longer one doing the entirety of Deadpool, and see how that gets received. And again, would love any feedback. Hope you enjoyed just hanging out and having something on. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. We'll see you in the comments.